Hi there, my name's Chris Can with MiningNews.net and Aspermont, and with me I have Eddie Rigg with Argonaut. Eddie, I was hoping you could give us a bit of an update on how Argonaut is looking at the moment and how you're positioning yourself in the market, expecting hopefully this uplift in commodity pricing and another super cycle, dare I say it.
I mean, I love it. I'm at the age, in the next 5 or 6 years, I'm maybe looking to retire and wind back. So let's make this super cycle go hard. But let me talk a bit about Argonaut. So last week, we were 22 years old, right? So we've been around a bit now. When we set the firm up, we went to West Australia. I was in Sydney. I came back to Perth, old West Australian lad. And we were very deliberate on wanting to be in mining and resources more generally. And we wanted to be quite deep. And all the sort of initial guys involved had worked for bulge bracket firms. And so we wanted to deliver a bit of a bulge bracket service, but not necessarily with the price tag, right? So we always, from the very early days, were very technically driven. And even today, we've got 6 geologists, 2 mining engineers, metallurgists, and a chemical engineer on staff, which gives us really good technical insight into projects. And we've stayed very narrow, and hopefully people appreciate that we're quite deep. So we're really metals and mining and soft commodities, a little bit of soft commodity work, mainly around decarbonisation and carbon products. But the primary our work is metals and mining. We have very much a global outlook, so that hasn't changed. But the firm has changed because we started off as sort of more of an advisory firm. Then we had the institutional broking business. But today we're quite diversified, and this will be our first year, I believe, that will generate more income from advisory work and funds management work than we will from stockbroking and raising capital. So that's been really the history was raising equity for mining companies, growth companies, and stockbroking. But as I said, this year I expect will be the first year we'll make more money from other things, and those other things are like we have quite a strong sort of insolvency advisory business, which works along with administrators and receivers. And so it's a technical team and also an advisory team, which goes in there to help companies which are in financial distress to actually maximise the value of the assets and also make some really important decisions at site. Sometimes boards which are running projects are so caught up with the legacy issues, they don't always see decisions which should be made, or are very uncomfortable making those decisions. So we'll go in there and help make those decisions. Then we'll work out, is a project viable or not? If it is viable, then we work with the receivers or the administrators to actually raise the money to make it viable again. So that business is actually, when the equity markets windows shut, which they pretty much have been shut, that's a good business. The other business is debt advisory, and I think it's going to be a record year for debt advisory work for us. So it's advising on debt and also arranging and structuring debt products. And once again, that only works when the equity window is shut. And the other business which has gone super for us is about 2 years ago, we bought the PCF business, which is the Liam Twigger's PCF business. And their biggest business activities were selling mining projects like realestate.com for mining projects, and also debt advisory work and some strategic advisory work. So that selling of small assets is back on. When the equity window shuts, companies go, how do I raise money? Well, let's sell the non-core assets. So that's been a good business too. So all of a sudden we've generated a whole lot of income from sources which most sort of equivalent sort of stockbroking, investment banking firms don't generate income from. So the business has become quite well balanced, unlike the way I carry on some parts of my life, which is some horses, etc. But I mean, it's much more balanced, and it's gone super, and we're really happy with the way it's sort of emerged as quite a mature business.
Okay, you talk about Argonaut being quite narrow, but my understanding is the actual organisation or the team is expanding, particularly in Sydney. You've had a couple of key appointments. Who are they, and why are they now involved?
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, we spent a lot of time working out where Argonaut was going, and the board was made up of guys from the age of 54 to 62, white males, not unusual for our sector. And we just brought on a 41-year-old person onto the board, Greg Southey. He's now our managing director. But we spent a lot of time thinking, where do we go? And there was a whole lot of contemplation going on. And some of that contemplation was, do we sell? because it was approaches. Do we merge with another group because there was a few of those opportunities, or do we merge with another group, bring some extra capital? And there was a whole lot of thought processes going on. And we just also at that time launched our funds management business, which was performing quite well. And so we sat back, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it, because I started the firm. I still remain the largest shareholder, major shareholder, and I'm the the exec chairman. And for me, one of the things I kept thinking about is I want to make sure this business is as good as it is today in 10 years' time and in 20 years' time. So I spent a lot of contemplation, and I was lucky enough that I've got a really, really good board of directors. So there's 60 odd staff, but I've got the board we've got is a really high quality board. So we've got 4 executive directors who work in the firm, but we also have 2 non-exec directors. And a guy called Brent Stewart, wouldn't be that well known on the east coast of Australia, but a highly successful businessman he loves working with good talent. He's like an angel investor in WA, but he's got involved with us many years ago. He was actually my former business partners with the guy who helped co-found Argonaut, Charles Fear. It was a guy which he'd known for a long time in rugby circles. So Brent's been with us now, I would say 13 or 14 years on our board. We also, about less than 2 years ago, brought on Jen Morris onto our board. And Jen Morris is a ripper. So Jen and I got together when we were trying to restructure the racing industry in WA. And that was a challenging thing. And by the way, we failed miserably, but we shouldn't have. If we'd done what we wanted to do, and Jen was working with Deloitte's consulting at the time, if we did what we wanted to do, the West Australian racing industry would just be booming. But unfortunately, the industry wasn't prepared for that amount of change at the time. So Jen's on the board, and she's on the board. She was on the board of Fortescue, and she was on the board of Samphire Line. And she's, I think, chair of the Australian Sports Commission. And people know Jen Morris's name. She was captain of the ladies hockey team, and she won 2 gold medals. And she's a ripper. And I love it because every now and then you need to get in there and fight hard. And she's a person who knows how to do that. So we had the benefit of having such high quality people on our board. And I put to them this idea that there's a couple of people we've identified, and particularly we'd done the PCF acquisition, and Liam Twigger came on, and Liam Twigger was just this absolute tremendous operator, right? Liam, he was 20, I think PCF was 29 years old when we bought that business into our business, and previously he'd been joint head of metals and mining at Macquarie and Bankers Trust. So he's a really high quality human being. And I saw the benefit of him coming into the firm, and I spent some time assessing the landscape in Australia, and 2 people came really high in the list of people I wanted to get. And one was Hayden Bairstow, who was to run the resources research team at Macquarie. And the other one was a guy called Ben Clifford, which no one in our firm had heard of. And Ben was being joint head of securities for Goldman Sachs for 5 years, and taken him from number 7 player in Australia to number 2 player in Australia. And before that, he was a divisional director of Macquarie Bank and Security. So both had great pedigrees. Hayden was a guy who's absolutely prolific. He writes research just for fun. It's just the guy's a workaholic, and has opinion, right? And Ben's this absolute Rolls Royce in investment banking. So to me, I went to the board and I said to him, there's two guys in Australia I want to go for. They're my 1 and 2 picks in Australia. And they also looked at me as if I was a bit crazy. Can you get them? I said, I just want to go for it. So over an extended period of time, I was able to get both to join the firm, and they're both in their 40s. So you go back a year, 40-year-olds in our firm own about 8% of the business. Those 3 guys now own 25% of the business, and they're the future. And we've now identified our best 30-year-olds. And our target is the 30-year-olds to own 10% of the business within 5 years, and then 20% of the business again within another 5 years. So I've put in place, I believe, a really good succession planning, but not just succession planning, they've just added enormous value to the business. When you have a guy like Ben Clifford, who's so well regarded on the east coast of Australia, and you get someone like Hayden Bairstow, who is, I I'll put on the record here, he's most really the best research analyst in the resources space in Australia. He was most really the highest profile guy as well. He is opinionated. When my wife, it's funny, I went through this process to get him, so it took a while, right? And it was probably a year, plus a year courting process. But when I finally, the last interview we had was, I met my wife. Now, my wife's, she's a psychologist and everyone laughs about it. I'm her permanent case study, but my wife's also a wonderful judge of a person. And I got my wife, Kylie, to interview him, which wasn't a formal interview, but met at a coffee shop. I got them to sit down, then I disappeared to talk to someone else at another table, left them talking, came back after 15, 20 minutes. My wife walked home. I don't let her drive. No, I do let her drive, but it was a coffee shop, not from our house. My wife walks home. I get home an hour or so later and she said, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. I said, well, just chuck the bad news a bit. And he goes, he's a lot like you. And I said, well, give me the good news. Well, he's a lot like you. So now I understand what you're saying, and Hayden's a ripper, and I just see, going to be sensational. Hayden, Greg Southey, Ben Clifford, that's the future leadership team of the firm, and couldn't be in better hands. So absolutely delighted. And what's the other really interesting thing is it's caused a general positive feeling in the firm that these high quality people have joined our firm because they're realising the quality of the firm. And some really interesting things happen. One, we've committed to moving into Elizabeth Quay to one of the flash new buildings going up in the city. There's only 60 people in Perth, and we're going to move into nearly 1,500 square metres. It's going to be the most amazing office with lounges and wellness rooms and whatever. But hopefully the engine rooms, which make the money, the broking and the funds management, the corporate advisory, will keep working. They won't just go in the lounge room all the time, and the bars we're setting up. But what's also we've seen is our research coverage is growing and growing. And so by the end of this year, most certainly we'll have the greatest, I think, research coverage of the decent companies you want to cover in the resources space. I expect we'll have 65, 70 institutional grade coverage stocks with a similar number under what monitoring, like short notes on. But what's been the most sort of really interesting is our research, our research sales, or our institutional sales from research, and what we're doing a year ago versus what we're doing now versus what we agreed as a target for the end of this year. To give you an idea, our target, which the guys have bought into, is we expect to be doing 8 to 10 times the business that we were doing a year ago by the end of this year. 8 to 10 times the business. And we weren't that small before, right? And if we do achieve that 8 to 10 times, just an agency brokerage in terms of volume, that flows into the capital raising capability, it flows onto your M&A capability, it flows onto various other aspects of the business. And so, rarely do I see have I seen this business in better shape. That worries me because I've got this great saying. I've got some really good quotes which every day I look at, and literally I won't say every day I look at. They're big on my big poster on my screen, and one of them is with Barry Patterson, one of the most famous mining engineers, Elton, GR Engineering, a whole range of business he's built. Barry Patterson. And Barry wrote this quote, says, the time you should feel concerned is the time when you think you're ahead, i.e. if you're getting cocky. I feel like we're getting ahead, so it's worrying the hell out of me. The second one, which is by my great mate Ron Sayers, who once again also passed away. And Ronnie said, the time, the amount of business you get out of your client is directly proportional to the amount of time you put into them. And he was a mining contractor, but that was his whole belief, that you've got to spend time with your clients. And it's not about AI and automatic pushing this out and out. You actually got to spend time, face time with the clients. And my last one was from a guy called Tony Rocco Patrizzi, and he runs GR Engineering. And he said, never forget, you're just a busted ass contractor. So there you go. So those things are my 3 principles of running the business. And but at the moment, I'm pretty damn happy with the way Argonaut's going.
Eddie, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Good on you. Thanks very much.